Hello friends, welcome to Jojo's Azure Learning YouTube channel. Today we will be discussing about Microsoft or Azure Virtual Desktop. Short name for Azure Virtual Desktop is AVD. It is a Microsoft full desktop virtualization environment. So in this video we will be talking about what are the terminologies used, what is the concept, what is the network connectivity behind. This will be in-depth details about Azure and Virtual Desktop. Please stay tuned. Thank you for watching. So in this video, we will be talking about what is exactly the AVD and what are the features, what are the things we can achieve, how we can securely connect, what is the architecture diagram, and we will be using a cloud adoption framework to just see the architecture diagram and enterprise scale landing zone, and you can see that in the down below I have put a link in between. This is a very high level architecture diagram for AVD and things that used. I will go by step. So there will be FSLogix. We will be talking about FSLogix. FSLogix is the company that Microsoft, I think 2018, Microsoft acquired, and this company with this FSLogix company, FSLogix feature, the roaming profile and the container that's been achieved. So it was able to do very fast, very secure way, attaching the profile into the user profile into the once they log in, it will be attached very dynamically. And then the host pools. Host pools, first you will be creating a host pools, and the host pools will be one or two, or maybe number of virtual machines will be inside the host pools. And we're also seeing, like, in the creating an image as a golden image, we can select from the Azure gallery, or you can select from our own image for the deployment. So the reason is we are having our own golden image deployment is to make sure all the virtual machines within the host pools will have the same software installed, same settings, same desktop, Windows desktop, everyone see the same thing. So this is very much useful when you have a department, they have the same software or application that needs to be used. So you don't need to deploy one and then install a bunch of software in every users. Instead of that, you deploy a VM and then convert that an image, and from that image you can deploy 10 machines or 50 machines, 15 virtual machines, and that will have all the same software installed. So we will be talking about the reduced cost, how we can reduce the cost with the pooled versus personal AVD. So the pooled will come with a multi-session Windows 10 multi-session machine. So when you have multi-session, at the same time, maybe like 3 to 4, depends upon the VM size or the memory CPU on that VM. We can have 3, 4, 5 users are connected to that Windows 10 at the same time. So the Windows 10, if you wanted to implement a pooled scenario where one virtual machine will be used to share with the multiple users. So in that scenario, you will be using a Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session. You need to select that VM when you deploy it. We will see step by step. This will be a series of videos for AVD. So please stay tuned. So we will be creating a number of videos with AVD to make sure everything is covered. So there is an option to provide individual ownership, that will not be any shared pool, through personal persistent desktop. So each person, we can assign a single virtual machine assigned to them. Then we have an option to auto scale, automatically increase or decrease capacity based on the time of the day, specific days of the week, or as demand changes, and this will tremendously help to manage the cost. So let's say we have created a pool and let's say 10 virtual machine is there, and you have the auto scaling mechanism. Let's say at the start of the day, right? Let's say every user will log in like 8 a.m. Central time. Every log in with 8 a.m. And at that time, what happens is like everybody wants to log in. In that time, these scale, the virtual machine automatically start up running automatically for like 10 virtual machine or 11, 12 like that. And let's say users are not using it, like no, everybody has gone home, slowly it will shut down all the VMs. So it tremendously helps to save the cost. And we'll talk about another video how to save cost on Azure, because when you trying to move to Azure, what exactly happens is like you'll be 7 million, 8 million cost will be involved. It is easy to move everything into migrate to Azure, and the day by day that cost will be increasing. So we'll be talking about another video about how to save cost. And in AVD there are two options. One is to have the full desktop virtualization, also remote app. Let's say you just wanted to have one of the application to start, not access to full desktop. It's that also possible. There is a two options available. We can also do a lot of device restrictions, blocking. So most of the time we want to be secure, right? We don't want, we have some code. Let's say we have a lot of code repository and a lot of documents and very secure compliance issues. We don't need that documents to be copied over to your personal laptop. So when you have to access the WVD from the personal laptop, let's say your own laptop, you should not allow to transfer data between the WVD to your personal laptop. So that is like, even if you try to copy in clipboard, and that should not be pasted into the your personal device. So there's an option to do. We can also do a USB device blocking. Let's say you're trying to connect, somebody's trying to connect a device into your personal laptop, and from the WVD they're trying to copy the data from WVD. That can also be restricted. So they are secure. It's very secure. We can also go very minute details to secure also. We can do a lot of things to restrict. So recently AVD, I think Microsoft introduced Power on Connect feature. This is really cool. So previously this option was not there. So what exactly we were trying to use? We used to use a PowerShell script to catch whenever the user trying to start the virtual machine. Let's say how it works is like, let's say at the night time, all the virtual machine will shut it down. Let's say you have 100 virtual machine in the WVD pool. We shut it down, everything. So what happens is whenever user is trying to connect, it should automatically start up the VM. Okay, with the power on connect, that exactly it does. When you try to click in the behind the scene, Microsoft will start the VM. It takes like around 2 to 3 minutes, and it will be ready for you. So you'll be saving a lot of cost. Whenever they need, they can just click on the WVD and then the virtual machine will start up, right? It's really cool. That feature was not there before. So what we were used to do is we used to do a PowerShell script to write a code and to capture activity log from somebody trying to start the VM. We capture that from the login analytics, and then when somebody tries to capture, we write a script, PowerShell script, to start immediately that VM. So this kind of a really tricky PowerShell script to write, but that's saved a lot of cost through that automation. But right now we don't need it. We can just do a group policy to just disconnect the session and power off the VM whenever it is not required, and then whenever it is ready, user click the ready to connect, it will automatically start up. That's really cool. And the another option is the drain mode. I'll show you in a second how the drain mode is there. So drain mode is like you don't need to shut down the VM. You can just do enable the drain mode. That means no users will be able to connect to it. That's another. If you want to do a maintenance, you have some issues with the agents on that machine, and you don't want to users to connect now, so you can enable the drain mode. And then we will be heavily talking about automation. So automation is the key thing, right? We will also talk some other video how to do Terraform automation using a Terraform with the WVD and deployments. We'll also talking about automation using the biceps, Azure biceps. That's a new feature. It's kind of a Terraform. You can say that Microsoft Terraform or Azure Terraform biceps, bicep. So we will be talking about that one also in the video. So stay tuned for that. So we will also talking about agent upgrade and troubleshooting. So some of the times what happens is time to time the WVD agent on the virtual machine has to be updated. Sometime after the update it doesn't come up. And so what are the things to troubleshoot during installation and things like that. So we will see that. We're also talking about a separate video. We will be bringing up the golden image. We will create a golden image once with all the settings what we need, and then we will be saving that golden image into a storage account, and we will be deploying that golden image whenever we are deploying a bunch of virtual machine for AVD. So we will see that all in this not in this video but series of video we will be putting out there. So please every weekend we can expect there is a one video comes up. So please stay tuned. If you have any questions, you want to see some how it is done, specific requirement or something, I can put a video out there. So let's get started. So we'll go to the next slide. So in this slide, we are talking about bunch of the Azure Virtual Desktop terminology, like a terms. What are the terms that we actually use it, right? So easy if you understand these terms, it is very easy. Even if you are talking about an interview or something, you just talk about session host pools and things like that. Oh yeah, they will understand that. Oh, you understand the things, and instead of talking about the layman terms, just try to use the actual terminology. The host pools. The host pools is a collection of virtual machine that registered to Azure Virtual Desktop as a session host when you run the Azure Virtual Desktop agent. The host pool can be of two types, personal versus pooled. So that's the two things you need to remember, right? Host pools means bunch of virtual machines. So each virtual machine is called a session host. And what are the two types of host pools? Personal versus pooled. So personal means one virtual machine will be assigned to one user. Pooled basically is a Windows 10 multi-session, and one virtual machine will be used by many users. Depends upon that, right? So that's pooled. And session host, as we told earlier, right? Session host is the Azure virtual machine within the host pool of the AVD environment is called session host. And workspaces. Workspaces is the logical grouping of the application groups in Azure Virtual Desktop. Each virtual desktop application group must be associated with a workspace for users to see the remote apps and desktops published to them. So it is very difficult to understand without seeing it. So I have another video how to deploy. You can watch if you are not watched already, where we are creating a workspace and session host pools in a step-by-step scenario. So you can watch that video to see a little bit, little bit understanding of how these things works. I definitely recommend you actually go through a trial subscription, Azure trial subscription, and then practice. Practice makes you perfect. Okay, app groups. App group is a logical grouping of the application on a session host. A app group can be a two types, remote app or full desktop. So end users are the ones who benefited from this AVD. I'll be saying WVD and AVD because I used to say all the time WVD, now it's AVD. So still in my mind, it is the WVD. So WVD is a Windows Virtual Desktop, AVD is the Azure Virtual Desktop. Both the same thing, Microsoft just changed the name. So end users connect by browser or client. There's a client we can download. I think there's another video I shown you how to download and connect to Windows Virtual Desktop. User sessions, there are 3 sessions active. That means user working on it right now. User is connected and active. Disconnected is he just disconnected. He's not actively working on it. Pending is user trying to connect, is still pending. It's not able to connect. Autoscale is a good option for automation to save a lot of cost. Autoscale is a pooled host pools, turns VMs on and off based on the capacity threshold and schedules of the customer defines. Let's say offshore. They start working in India time or like Pakistan time, whoever your offshore team is based on, which geographical location, right? So the time it starts, you can just it auto scale up to all the virtual machine, and then night time nobody is working, you can just shut it off. All the virtual machine will be turned off, and you save a bunch of cost saving. Load balancing and another term. So user sessions are load balanced to session host in the host pool based on the session count. There are 2 algorithms to use, breadth first or depth first. So let's imagine in the load balancing pool. Let's say in the host pool I have 10, let's say imagine 10 VM, 10 session hosts. In that 10 session host, if you say the depth first, 10 users are connecting, then every user will be going to connect to the first VM, and it depends upon the depth count, right? If you put depth 5, it will go to all the users will go to the first VM, 5 users will go to the first VM, and then it will go to the second VM 5, and remaining 8 VMs are idle, nobody is using it. They're like a depth first. Let's say a breadth first. So breadth first is an algorithm. What it exactly say that if you have 10 VM and 10 virtual machine, first user will go to the first VM, second user will go to the second VM, and third will go to the third VM, and so on. So basically each user will get each virtual machine, and finally there is an 11th user trying to connect, that will come to the first one. So depth and breadth first algorithm. We can set this load balancing technology as per our demands, as per the user requirement, how exactly we need, depends upon the performance and things like that. And FSLogix, as I said earlier, that is a huge advantage in 2018. They acquired this FSLogix, and they were able to do a dynamic attachment to the user profile into the storage account and Azure files and etc. So AVD recommends FSLogix profile containers as a user profile solution. So when users are connecting via public internet, so if somebody, let's say if you are not using a Azure Virtual Desktop, you are trying to open a port 3389 RDP port directly into the virtual machine, then that's in exposing a lot of direct connections to, there is no secure, it's not secure. So this is very secure because it is connecting to a Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure. There is a gateway that traffic has to go through the gateway, and there is a web and broker. So it's very much secure. So there is a mechanism in between the session host here in Azure and the public internet. So users, the client is the user. That's where user will be connecting to. User will be connecting. It will a personal laptop. They will be using a web browser, or they will be using a client, and then they use through a public internet. There is no VPN or nothing is required, and they will be going through this Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure through this gateway and the connection broker, and it will be going to a session host. And this session host will be it has to have an Active Directory connectivity, Active Directory domain services. So this needs to have a connectivity to the domain controller. And this session host will be joined to Active Directory domain. And this RDP data pass through TLS protocol. That's the most secure protocol. And then it used the port 443, and it's secure. And the user authentication will happen through Azure Active Directory. You can see the AD Connect sync happens between Active Directory domain services and LocalAD through AD Connect sync and to Azure Active Directory. So this diagram talk about the hybrid identity. So basically Active Directory domain services, AD Connect going through this one, and then this will be local users will be created over here, and then it will be synced to Azure Active Directory. I think I have created another video about AD Connect. If you have not watched, please do so. And so basically, whenever user signs in, it actually authenticated the workspace and the AzureAD tenant. It will be logging to AzureAD authentication, and the session host will be joined to Active Directory domain services. It will be joined to a domain. Moving into the next slide. So this is exactly some more details into it. If you are interested, you can now see this, or you can move on to the next slide. So Active Directory, and then you can see an Azure Virtual Desktop control plane, web access, gateway, broker, diagnostic, all those things. These things are managed by Azure itself. We don't need to worry about all those things. These ones, right? So these ones will be managed by us, Active Directory subnet, and VNet peering if we suppose we have the another subscription for AVD. That's also recommended. If you look into the landing zone cloud adoption framework or well-architected framework from Microsoft, if you see that, you can actually see that you can actually have a different subscription for WVD, and then you can do a VNet peering to connect to the Active Directory VNet. I can see a VNet peering is available here, and there is a separate, all these VMs are separate for, or you can see the desktop subnet. You can do a separate subnet or VNet for session host. And then this VNet will be connected to, we can do a service endpoint to connect to the storage account, Azure NetApp files and Azure files. That is needed for roaming profile, container, FSLogix, and for that. So this is here the on-premise network. This is basically to connect from the client will be connecting from basically from anywhere. That's the main feature, right? It is secure. You can connect it from anywhere. You can connect it from any public computer anywhere. It is mostly secure. It is anywhere. You just go to the browser and you can connect to the WVD. So mostly that's the feature, right? You don't need to carry anything. If you have any kind of a personal laptop or desktop, you can connect it from anywhere. Moving on to the next slide. So this is explaining what exactly the administrator or the architect, Azure architect, will be supporting. This gateway, web access, connection broker, storage, license server. In the AVD infrastructure, basically all those in the PaaS backend platform as a service, that's all managed by Azure managed. So Microsoft is basically managed. If any issues with the gateway, we don't need to worry about it. If any issues with the connection broker, you don't need to worry about license server, nothing. All these things are managed by Microsoft. So session host, we manage session host. We as administrator manage session host. Azure Active Directory we manage it. And session host updates, reboot, any issues connecting, installing agents, things like that, and application users and etc. Azure Virtual Network, we manage that. So that's basically you are connecting an Azure Virtual Desktop into a on-premise network using a VPN or Express route. So let's say you wanted to have a connectivity from your on-premise network to Express route. There are many options, right? We can have site-to-site VPN, or we can have Azure Express route. Express route is the dedicated high bandwidth direct connection to and from on-premise to Azure network. Yeah, that's the Azure Virtual Network. And AzureAD is the identity and access management for users, where the users are really created in AzureAD, and domain services. That's basically AD Connect and local Active Directory users and computers. That's why the identity, Active Directory, domain services, and session host. Session host will have an operating system that will be Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Server, whatever the operating system session host that will be running on operating system. So these all will be managed by administrator, customer managed. So we talked about personal and pool desktop. I think you should be clear with personal and pool desktop. Host pools are the collection of one or more identical virtual machines within their AVD environment. Pooled versus personal. So this is talking about pooled host pool. We configure a pooled host pool for multiple users sign in and share a VM. So multiple users with sharing a one VM, that's a pooled host pool. And for that, Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session operating system is required in order to use that. Personal host pool, each person will get a dedicated VM. Sometimes it's also called persistent desktop. So once you connected, you always connect there, persistent. That's the meaning, right? You persistently connected. So you always connected to the same assigned VM. You have an assigned VM. And users always connect to the same specific session host. Unless there is an issue, you can just remove the assignment and assign to another, that user to another VM. Unless and until the administrator go ahead and change the assignment, the user will always connect to the same session host. Users modify the desktop to meet personal preference. Always they can reboot, they can change everything. You always get the same desktop. Users can save files into desktop environment. Users can install and uninstall apps without impacting other users. So basically, you can give a local administrator privilege to that session host, to that user. So user gets a complete privilege. He can install and uninstall application without impacting other users. Going to the next slide. So this we talk about the balancing host pools, breadth first and depth. So you can see the depth mode is going in deep. So this one virtual machine, everybody is connecting to there, and then it will go. So see, ideal for cost conscious organization, that one more granular. So we will be saving a lot of cost if we go depth first. So you have 10 virtual machine, you will be using only 2 all the time, right? Because all will be going to 112. Every users will be going to one session host and second session host. All 8 will be free. And let's say you guys they have a performance issue, then you can change the depth to say 2. So they will be little bit spreading to other VMs as well. So that will be turned on with auto scale. The storage solution, this is very important. The storage solution is, we want to select an appropriate storage solution when you are implementing FSLogix. Because as I said earlier, FSLogix is designed to ROM profiles in remote computing environment, such as AVD. So VHD or VHDX format, both will be supported. So there will be a container. You'll be creating a storage account and container, blob container, and then there will be a VHD. Each user will have a VHD in the storage account, and every time it sign in, it will dynamically attach to that profile will be attached. So if you save something on the desktop and then you log out, log in, you come back tomorrow and logs again, and you will see the same file you saved in the desktop, because that will be stored in that storage account. So user profile is immediately available and appears in the system exactly like a native user profile. It doesn't see any difference, any slowness because of the FSLogix implementation. So you'll not see any difference. It is as if you are logging into a local computer, but This actual profile is coming from Azure file, a blob container. Okay. So the key terms of the Windows desktop client deployment, application group, remote app or remote desktop. Key terms for the workspace, you already seen that, host pool, application group. You can read through this. This is self-explanatory, but we already discussed this. So there is a conditional access policies. So together with the WVD, we can implement the conditional access policy. Whether when somebody trying to log into WVD, we can say only access if require MFA, multi-factor authentication. If they are not have a multi-factor authentication, you can block access. Or the device is logging from, let's say the device is logging from their company laptop, it is secure. Then you can just say it is compliant and it is joined to domain. Then you can just skip MFA. You can allow directly. And if you have any real-time risk from the location, from let's say from the south of, I cannot say one region, but let's say some region from some region you're trying to access. Let's say Africa. I'm not saying just Africa, but let's just say, for the sake I'm saying Africa, we wanted to block user signing in from Africa. Then you can just block WVD access. That's a conditional access policy. We will discuss that in later. We'll create a separate video for implementing conditional access policy. Moving on to next slide. So these are the components for the conditional access policy. I'll quickly explain. Users and groups. Which users and groups will be included or excluded from the policy? Does this policy include all users or specific group of users, directory roles or external users? So we have an option to conditional access policy is conditionally giving access, right? So basically we can say, oh, I can only allow WVD for these specific users or these groups. So we can create a group, Active Directory group, and say in the conditional access policy only these are allowed. Okay. And we can also say external users, okay, like a business to client or some users external. They are not in the Active Directory. They are externally users, like a guest account. So that we can see it later. We'll have a separate video, but this is understanding. Cloud application. What applications will the policy apply to? So we have to select in this case WVD. So that is the application we are giving conditional access policy to. So under conditional access policy, we can select WVD and then allow WVD so and so groups, something like that. Session controls is in what is session control access to cloud apps by implementing requirement app enforced permissions. We'll discuss that while seeing it. We'll have a separate video for conditional access policy. What conditions? What kind of conditions are for that? Is it a domain joined device? What kind of compliance we need to put together for that conditions? Device platform. Are they only allowed from Windows machine, or they can access it from Macintosh or Mac OS? What kind of a device platform is allowed? And is it allowed from a browser? Do we want to grant access controls? Do we want to grant access to resources by implementing MFA, multi-factor authentication, and devices marked as a compliant, or hybrid AzureAD joined devices? The hybrid AzureAD joined devices is basically a device that is joined to LocalAD domain, and also it is joined to AzureAD domain. So that's called hybrid AzureAD joined devices. We'll talk about that also in another video. This slide we'll be talking about FSLogix profile containers. FSLogix is designed to roam profiles in remote computing in Azure WVD, right? I mean virtual desktop. It stores a complete user profile in a single container. At sign-in, the container is dynamically attached to the computing environment, natively supported VHD or VHDX. So it appears exactly like a native user profile. There is no difference. It is faster. Okay. We can create a multiple container. We can create profile container. We can also create a container for office container. So we'll see you another option how to create a profile container, how to push it through a GPO group policy. But we will quickly go through this one. These are options. So just say you have two options available: profile versus office container. This will be the end of the video of this session, Azure Virtual Desktop. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please put down below. I'll respond to that. Hope you learned from this. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.